Okay, all ready? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to the PPP Weekly Press Conference. With me here this morning are Minister Juan Edghill, Member of Parliament, Minister Norman Whitaker, Member of Parliament, and we will be joined in a few moments by MP Mansour Nadir. We have 4 statements here this morning, after which we'll be taking questions. The first statement I will be reading deals with Chedijagan March month activities. The People's Progressive Party will be leading activities in March 2014 in observance of the 17th death anniversary of the late Dr. Chedijagan, former president of Guyana, revered as father of our nation. These observances will also span celebration of the life and works of his wife, former President Janet Jagan, whose death anniversary is also in March. Together with Guyanese from all across the country, party groups, supporters, and fraternal organizations, the PPP will use the month to fittingly reflect on the contributions to the national development by Dr. Jagan and his wife. Dr. Jagan, the man of the people, as he was commonly known and referred to, with his pro-poor working-class philosophy, leads many struggles against British colonialism and PNC dictatorship, resulting in a democratic Guyana in 1992. This saw commencement of the dawn of a new era, which subsequently resulted in transformational changes in Guyana under successive PPPC administration. Among activities for Dr. Jagan's death anniversary is the annual activity at Babujan Crematorium, Port Moran, on Sunday, March the 9th at 2:30 p.m., where leaders of our party will make presentation interspersed by cultural items. Earlier in the morning, the annual Chedijagan cycle race competition will ride off from New Amsterdam and culminate at Port Moran Quarantine. On Monday, the 24th of March, the annual Chedijagan lecture will take place at the Chedijagan Resort Center, Red House, at 17 hours. Activities are planned in all 10 regions of Guyana, highlighted by the commissioning of the Ashalton PPP office in Region 9. The much-anticipated Chedijagan Fitness Walk will be held on Sunday, 16th of March at the National Park, and the Family Fun Day on Sunday, the 23rd of March at the State House, Georgetown. Dr. Jagan's vision continues to be a living guide of the work of the party as his legacy is visible throughout Guyana's success stories. The PPP is grateful for the overwhelming love and support that is generated from these observances as Guyanese continue to use the month of March to acknowledge the greatness of this outstanding son of our soil. I want to say that yesterday we commenced the first activity with a cycle race in West Demerara, and there will be more activity planned during the month of March. You have activity also from the GAU, as I said, the GAU, WPO, PYO, RPA, and other fraternal organization. Thank you very much. We'll now go to Minister Whitaker.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's Progressive Party has always viewed the budget as an important planning and management tool, which emanates out of a vision for development of self, community, organization, or country, and has clearly defined, clearly set out goals. It therefore necessarily implies that without a vision, any budget prepared leads that individual or community or organization or country along a path to anywhere, and more often than not, to nowhere. A quick glance around the city of Georgetown, for which Mayor Green and Council have responsibility, could only lead us to deduce that the Council has no plans for improving the conditions under which the citizens of Georgetown live and the aesthetic of the city. In such cases, the budget is merely an exercise in ad hocery. Our government recognizes this laxity on the part of the City Council. In fact, we recognized it many years ago. And that is why, notwithstanding the fact that the existing legislation does allow the Council to prepare and approve its own annual estimates, government has sought perennially through the sector ministry, the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, to ensure that Council's annual estimates emanates out of a process of consultation with residents and focuses inter alia in providing core services such as proper drainage, efficient solid waste management, vending in markets and market tarmac under good sanitary conditions, removal of thick vegetation, ensuring that the incidents of breaches of building codes are addressed, etc. In addition, we have sought to work with the Council to get that body to address the inadequacies and inefficiencies highlighted in the Keith Burrows report and more recently in the Ramon Gaskin report. These include issues of transparency, of procurement, accountability, debt collection, and of course, providing efficient services. Quite recently, more so since the appointment of Town Clerk Suba, the Council, with the Mayor at its helm, has sought to distance itself from this transparent arrangement that's aimed at assisting the Council to do what is right for the citizens of Georgetown and by extension Guyana. I wish to highlight several of these inadequacies which the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development has discerned from close examination of the Council's 2014 budget proposals. The Council, in its 2014 budget proposal, plans to expend some $2.3 billion out of anticipated revenue inflow of $2.055 billion. In other words, the Council plan, the one that is submitted to the ministry, don't know if they have changed it since. The Council plans to spend almost $250 more than what it plans to receive, what it expects to receive. There is no explanation as to how the Council will finance the deficit. Melgar, after carefully, that's Ministry of Local Government, examining the budget, and notice also that employment costs and employment overhead stands at 56% of the total anticipated inflow. And a mere 28% of this inflow is set aside for capital works, that's new works. While overtime continues to be featured to be very high in the budget. The budgeted staff strength, which in the ministry's 2013 review was already high, increased by 4% for 2014. That is, the Council plans to add more numbers to the already underutilized staff. Provisions also made for increases for councillor stipend and allowances as well as gratuity for a poorly performing council. In short, ladies and gentlemen, the Council plans to spend almost 70% of the citizens' rates and taxes for 2014 on themselves and staff. And this is a Council with a current and long-term liability, well, in fact, it's a current liability of $1.3 billion, including debts to GPL, NIS, and GRA. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll have Minister Edgehill. Move this across. Move this across.
The People's Progressive Party would like to once again express its profound disappointment at the continuous action of the combined opposition to place Guyana and Guyanese in the path of the impending dangerous consequences following the non-passage of the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Bill. Guyana missed another deadline, the latest being February 28, 2014, following the irresponsible actions of the opposition not to support the bill. The PPP therefore places this responsibility for whatever consequences Guyanese may encounter solely at the feet of the opposition. Given the position taken by the opposition, the PPP is compelled to ask again, why would these elected representatives who profess to have the welfare of Guyanese at heart, including their own supporters, willfully and maliciously place all in harm's way? Over the many months, the main opposition, a Partnership for National Unity, failed to make known objections it may have regarding the bill. And as is now popularly known, only a few days ago, made a last-minute submission. This was clearly a deliberate attempt to not only delay debates to facilitate the passage of the bill, but to bring to bear unwarranted suffering to the hard-working people of this country. More so, it was a deliberate attempt to embarrass and to have Guyana sanctioned by the international community so as to derail the overwhelming progress achieved under the PPP-led administration. This is the latest of many attempts by the opposition to reverse the economic strides of our nation and return this now free, democratic, and progressive country to a state of bankruptcy and backwardness. While this is nothing new for the opposition, given their public position of professing to be working for a better Guyana, it would have been reasonable to expect a sense of nationalism and to act responsibly. Their actions have made it pellucid that such positions articulated were mere exercises in political rhetoric and deception, even for their own supporters. The PPP would like to reiterate that the government it leads entered the discussions regarding the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Bill in good faith. The Alliance for Change signaled its willingness to support the passage of the bill based on a resolution regarding the Public Procurement Commission. The AFC had been adamant that their support was hinged on the establishment of the PPC. Despite the AFC's demand, it was clear that it had no contention with the actual bill, but wanted what they insisted on as a prerequisite for support. It is therefore extremely mind-boggling that the AFC, which vehemently professes to be responsible and independent of the PNC, has reneged on the resolution reached regarding the PPC and has now adopted the positions taken by the APNU. This can only be viewed as a resort to treachery by the AFC and is further demonstrative of that party's gross attempts to continue to mislead and misinform the nation and their supporters regarding their independency and its false claim of not working in cohorts with the APNU. Recently, an official from the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, CFATF, Mr. Roger Hernandez, in his meeting with the Parliamentary Special Select Committee and in a press conference, reiterated what government has been saying all along, that the bill in its current form is compliant. He was clear when he noted that amendments proposed by the APNU could make the current bill non-compliant and would therefore place the country at risk. This is clearly a vindication of what the government continues to articulate. Given this, the question becomes obvious. Why would the AFC suddenly adopt APNU's position and thereby collaborating to place the country and its people in jeopardy? This wholesale adoption of the position taken by the APNU will serve to continue the erosion of the AFC's credibility. The dogmatic approach which the APNU continues to take is consistent with its position of not wanting any movement on the bill. Our party reiterates that both APNU and the AFC have deliberately not taken into consideration the harsh consequences the non-passage of this bill would bring to bear on the people of this nation. It must be asked, why would both parties continue to ignore the related challenges their own supporters can face? The effects of the non-passage of this bill are not confined only to members of the PPP, and the actions of the opposition is further indicative of their wanton disregard for the welfare of our people. It should be noted that during the all-party talks pertaining to the passage of this bill, the PPP-led government exhausted all opportunities for a resolution and has taken extremely reasonable positions during those discussions. Unfortunately, the intransigence of the opposition has led to Guyana missing the February 28th deadline. Guyanese must remain cognizant of these actions by the opposition, which are intrinsically designed to wreck the economy, to bring hardships to all, including their supporters, as it continues to foster a political agenda which is counterproductive to the development of Guyana. The party would therefore like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have and continue to express their support for the position taken by the government for the passage of the bill. This expression of support was further demonstrated through the town hall style meetings held recently in non-traditional PPP areas. These meetings, which were held to provide an opportunity for Guyanese to seek clarification and to freely express their views, were tremendously successful. The feedback from these meetings and the public at large have been overwhelming in its support and appreciation for the current bill to pass. Such demonstration of unity and nationalism by Guyanese across our country in supporting this bill was not seen since the same was manifested for the Amalia Falls hydroelectricity project. This show of unity and nationalistic pride holds good for the future of our country, despite the opposition's continuous attempt to ignore the will of the Guyanese people. Once again, our party would like to express its gratitude to all who continue to show support for the government's position regarding the passage of this bill. It is therefore profoundly unfortunate that in this context, the opposition will continue to exhibit a wanton disregard for nationhood. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning. The People's Progressive Party would like to make a statement on the criticisms leveled at the National Assembly by the Critchlow Labour College, by the executive of the Guyana Trade Union Congress on the matter of the Critchlow Labour College. The People's Progressive Party is aghast that Mr. Lincoln Lewis, on behalf of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, would so swiftly, within 24 hours, denounce the National Assembly after the House had unanimously voted that it would restore the subvention to the Critchlow Labour College once the TUC amended the Labour component on its board to have an equal number of representatives from the two umbrella labour organizations, that is, the FITUG and the GTUC. For the past 6 years, there have been calls from many quarters, especially the political opposition and anti-government public figures, to restore the subvention, which the government had suspending, citing that there must be accountability and democratic governance within the Critchlow Labour College. The rejection by the TUC of the National Assembly's unanimous motion is a clear indication that all the hullabaloo they made about restoration of the subvention had nothing to do about money and the students, but merely about politics. The TUC leadership has stood steadfast that it would prefer to rule over ruin, a sick philosophy of many in the People's National Congress, rather than come to a consensus that would be in the interest of all stakeholders of the college and the national labor movement as a whole. Last week in the National Assembly, there was that consensus. Every one of the members of Parliament, collectively and individually, registered their vote for there to be reform in the governance of the Critchlow Labour College by ensuring that the collective voice of the organized labor movement is represented on the board of the Critchlow Labour College. The swift and complete rejection by the TUC is not only a slap in the face of the Alliance for Change, which brought the motion and the amendment, but it also reflects on the TUC dictatorship, which has hijacked the Critchlow Labour College. A dictatorship that is not intent on managing the CLC for the development of our youth and the unity of the labor movement, but to achieve the objective of making the PPPC government look bad. It is this dictatorship that is now hurting the Critchlow Labour College and preventing the unification of the labor movement. Dr. Nanda Gopal, the Honorable Minister of Labor, in his contribution to the debate last Thursday, said that it is inconceivable that one of the smallest unions in the country, with under 200 members out of an organized labor population of 50,000, could hold the presidency and general secretary positions of the TUC, and for such a long time. The International Labour Organization, in all of its conventions and policy statements, speak to the state and stakeholders, consulting with the most representative organizations of labor. The GTUC, and certainly the composition of the board of the CLC, cannot and does not pass this litmus test of the ILO. At least two former CLC principals, Dr. Rupert Rupnarain and the late Godwin MacPherson, wanted to ensure that the CLC would revert to being an institution of education rather than a vehicle of politics. Dr. Rupnarain, the current deputy leader of APNU, in his contribution to the motion last Thursday, acknowledged that there was need for the broadening of the labor representative on the CLC board. Dr. Rupnarain, who we believe spoke from his heart that night, had worked hard towards bringing the financial records and reports of the CLC up to date. That was in 2007, and to deal with the accountability aspects of the CLC. He was at that time providing for the requirements which was asked of the college by the Minister of Education. This angered the GTUC dictatorship, who began to put pressure on him and even threatened to fire him, causing him to quit in disgust, saying that the CLC was being run like a cake shop. The late Godwin MacPherson, for all his efforts to put education first and politics behind, was padlocked out of his office when he was principal. It is this bitterness and stubbornness of the TUC dictatorship that is now torn in the National Assembly. The PPP notes that both the TUC General Secretary, Lincoln Lewis, and his puppet president, Leslie Gonzalez, have now zeroed in on character assassination of Dr. Rup Narain and Dr. Nanda Gopoa. True to form, the leadership of the TUC would oppose all initiatives to bring democratic governance to the CLC. The People's Progressive Party, a party born of the workers, feels vindicated that it has all along correctly spoken about the leadership of the TUC efforts to keep out democracy from the CLC. This has been the plague of the TUC since the days of the PNC dictatorship, when at one time even 2 ministers of the PNC regime sat on the TUC executive. Another element which is against all of the ILO conventions. This refusal to bring democratization to the TUC has also been the cause of the split in the labor movement and the formation of FITUG. Last week's unanimity in the passage of this motion in Parliament was a rare show of consensus where the CLC was concerned. However, these hopes are once again being dashed by the minority that calls itself the Guyana Trades Union Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question? Will be the floor.
Chat rounds for the question for Mr. Edel. Going forward, how does the PPP intend to ensure that the amendments are passed?
You will be aware that the Select Committee continues to meet. The report and the approved bill did not make it to the House for the February 27th sitting. There is a sitting of the Special Select Committee this Wednesday. The members of that committee will continue to work and to engage, even though we have missed the deadline, to see if we can continue to persuade our colleagues in that select committee to get a compliant bill to CFATF, even though we have missed the deadline. But we don't want to excuse the fact that we have missed the deadline, because the compliant bill was ready as of February the 9th. As of February the 9th, we had agreement by all the parties on a bill that was compliant. We have said to the APNU, the amendments that they brought on the night of February 9th are amendments that require national consultation, and the President himself would have indicated to the leader of the opposition that those amendments needs to be reviewed by CFATF and FATF to see if they would keep us in compliance. And that is our position, and we continue to work to ensure that we get a compliant bill while we deal with the issues of these new amendments, which could make us non-compliant and could really bring our people tremendous suffering and difficulties. So we will remain engaged.
Will there be sanctions for missing the deadline?
Well, Mr. Hernandez, when he was here, made it very clear. The February 28th deadline was not just for Guyana. In order for the CFATF to be able to review Guyana and to give us a positive review, the submission of February 28th was necessary so that it could be able to meet the May plenary of the CFATF. It was very clear. I don't need to repeat what Mr. Hernandez have said. He made it very clear. A non-submission of the February 28th puts Guyana at risk. We will continue to work to see how we could cushion the effects if we can get a bill that is compliant passed soonest. Because ultimately, whether we are blacklisted or further blacklisted, we still need to pursue getting a status where we are compliant. And that is the objective of the government, to ensure that we have a legislation that is CFATF and FATF compliant.
If the opposition refuses to budge on its position, then what's the next step for the PPP?
The PPP will have to determine that at the appropriate time. I am sure that, and I've been seeing all kinds of different views being expressed, but that's a matter for the hierarchy of the PPP to analyze and to contemplate what are the next steps, and I'm sure at the appropriate time that will be made public.
Has the report been submitted to CFATF on Friday?
Well, the report of February 28th needed to report on two aspects: the legislative as well as the non-legislative aspects. You would have heard the Attorney General speaking to those issues in a previous press conference that he shared with the President. We have been able to report to CFATF about the steps, the administrative steps that the government would have taken, and more particularly as it relates to the non-legislative work. And of course, CFATF is fully aware of the challenges that we are having here, because we have a peculiar situation. Governments around the world are being sanctioned because they are not willing, or they did not put in place mechanisms to ensure that their country is compliant. In Guyana, we have a government that wants to put in place that kind of architecture. We've been working every day to put in place that mechanism, but we have an opposition that is blocking it. And those reports and that information is being fed to the relevant persons as it relates to this matter.
You said that the government's position remains the same as it relates to APNU's amendments. The AFC at their press conference last Thursday said that the indication from the government when the president met with both parties was that the government is willing to compromise or to reach some sort of consensus as it relates to the PPC and nominating persons to that PPC. But no moves have been made yet.
That's not a secret. That's not a secret. And what we are saying today as the PPP, the PPPC government, there was an arrangement that was made in those discussions with the AFC. The AFC has since reneged on those issues. All the AFC wanted was the PPC, the Public Procurement Commission. When we met in the all-party talks, the AFC was saying, we don't only want the PPC, we want all of APNU's amendments. And the public needs to know that. The AFC can't hide behind the fact that they have changed the goalposts. The government and the AFC discussed the setting up of the PPC. And that is not a secret, that is known. When we met together with the APNU and the AFC, the roadmap that was agreed upon between the government and the AFC went through the window when the when the AFC said, we don't only want the PPC, but we are standing and we want the amendments that the APNU is also requesting. You know why? Because the AFC recognized that in order for there to be a PPC, you have to get 2/3 of the votes of all the members of the National Assembly. And even though the AFC could support the government, and that is where the issue of morality comes in here, even though the AFC could have supported the government because they said they have absolutely no issue or no contention with any of the clauses in their proposed amendment bill, when they realized that the government votes and the AFC votes were not sufficient to give them the 2/3 majority for the PPC, they changed their position and says, hey, we want the amendments that the APNU is proposing. I wouldn't use the term here, but you know, that is going to the highest bidder. That is a term that will be described as the person who goes to the highest bidder. We are in love, but when more is offered, you're in love more with the person who's offering more. And that's what, I wouldn't use the term here, but that was terrible for the country.
Why weren't the PPC nominees forwarded to the select or the committee, the PAC rather?
The issue of the PAC receiving nominations is a process that is ongoing. If the government made a commitment that they will submit names at a particular time based upon an agreement, and that agreement is broken, what is next? The AFC had said that there would be a sitting of the PAC and that the government will submit their names at the time of that sitting before February 27th. There was no sitting of the PAC before February 27th. There was no sitting of the PAC before February 27th.
The committee needs to sit in order for you to submit your nominees.
My understanding, based upon the discussions with the AFC, was that at a sitting of the PAC, the names would have been submitted and there would have been discussions as it relates to the selecting of the names to earn the 2/3 vote.
But sir, aren't you also gambling if it is that the establishment of the Public Procurement Commission is a constitutional obligation on the part of your government?
We're not establishing the PPC because the AFC asks it.
So why are you...
We are establishing the PPC because the Constitution requires it, and we must remind that it was the PPP-led government that introduced legislation and brought into place the Procurement Act.
But you just said if the AFC withdrew its roadmap, and so...
So we are allowing the process to be followed. The process, which is the process that was outlined, as I understand it. The PAC has established a subcommittee that is receiving names. As I understand it, there are some 40-something names that have already been received. Organizations and so on have nominated persons. At the next sitting of the PAC, the party will deal with how they will treat with this process.
Mr. Edgell, in light of the current deadlock, will the PPP consider either meeting the demands of the APNU or the AFC in order to save Guyana the sanctions of the financial action?
Well, you see, this is where we will have a dilemma. Because I have pronounced on this before at the press conference I shared with the president. In the name of righteousness, why should a government have to sell its soul, put its people at harm in horse trading? It's what the president called blackmail politics, just to get a piece of legislation passed. This is not a piece of legislation that will only affect the government or will only affect PPP supporters. The people of Guyana needs to know that the risk that Mr. Greenidge and Mr. Basil Williams and Mr. Granger and Mr. Harmon, who have been speaking on this matter, and some of them who sit on the Special Parliamentary Select Committee, that has been dilly-dallying and filibustering and playing with people's lives, it will not only affect the government, even the APNU supporters will be affected. The AFC, the same. This demand, as if you're coming from this high moral ground of righteousness, that we want this PPC. And if we don't get the PPC, we're not going to support the anti-money laundering bill. It's not only government supporters will feel the squeeze. The AFC supporters will, if we are sanctioned. The government and the PPP has remained very clear. The no objection clause must be restored to the Procurement Act. We have placed that amendment to the National Assembly. The AFC said that they will support that amendment in order to get the PPC, and then we see some redrafting and some reworking of and some spinning of hands and turning of elbows as if it is cricket we are playing as it relates to this particular matter. The government and the PPP-led administration is willing and prepared to have a PPC in place tomorrow, providing that the government maintains its right to offer no objections. And that has been our position.
Minister Whitaker, has the government received any request for an interim management committee to be established in Georgetown?
The answer is no. The legislation provides that the citizens, any set of aggrieved persons who reside within that constituency, within the local authority area, can present such a petition. We haven't received any.
Can you say what the status of preparation is for local government, given that the
What's the status of?
local government preparation, elections preparation?
My understanding is that we have started the public awareness since last October. My understanding also is that the 3 pieces of legislation that were integral to the holding of local government elections, these are the Local Authorities Elections Amendment Act, it's now an act, the Fiscal Transfers Act, and the Local Government Commission Act, have all been passed in the Parliament and have been assented to by His Excellency. But you see, my friends, the timeliness, the timing of the holding of local government elections presumes that there's adequate preparation for such elections. And all the various parties have to be satisfied with respect to the preparation for this election. This is not merely about political parties' readiness. This is also about the citizens' readiness. And that is why we started since last October with our public education and awareness campaign. Because if at the end of it you expend hundreds of millions of dollars and you get 30% of the electorate making themselves available to cast their vote, then in my own humble opinion is that the investment would have been a poor investment. And so the pieces of legislation that are required as per the Constitution of Ghana have already been passed and assented to by His Excellency. And we are moving through with our public awareness, education. We have touched a number of areas and we have had some good turnout. But we have other agencies, other bodies. You have GECOM has its work to do too. The political parties have their work to do too. This is not just a local government bit. So I hope that I've answered your question. The Local Government Act, though it was passed in the Parliament by virtue of the fact that the opposition had the 1-seat majority, was not assented to by His Excellency. We are confusing several pieces of legislation. Let me run them to you again. Oh, commission. Yeah, that's a different. Yeah, the commencement order is not being signed as yet.
When can we expect it to be signed?
I couldn't, as I sit here, give you that answer. The Local Government Commission is not something that will be set up merely by asking that it be set up. There's the issue of identification of persons to sit on this commission. There's the issue of staffing for the commission, the issue of accommodation for the commission, and important also, some of the amendments proposed by the opposition in respect of the Local Government Amendment Act, the present Local Government Amendment Act of 2802, which pertains to the Local Government Commission, have been ruled by our Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs as being ultra vires the Constitution, and therefore acting on the advice of the Attorney General, we could not go down that road. So I could not say as I sit here that tomorrow that order will be signed, but we are working to move in that direction.
Minister Whittaker, how are you coping with the increased workload since the resignation of Gandhi Sworn?
Our officers at the level, at the ministry have been tasked with taking on added duties and responsibilities.
Right, and question for Mr. Nadir. How much or how integral is the curriculum labor college to the delivery of technical education?
As I had mentioned last Thursday, the landscape had changed. But if we could just back up a little bit with respect to the history, there were significant changes in our legislation to allow for persons who had graduated from the Critchlow Labour College to gain entry to the University of Guyana. We now have students who can write an entrance examination and pass, and if they pass that, can get admittance to the University of Guyana. More institutions that offer opportunities for lessons and other form of education for students to pass CXC currently exist. But it would not harm to have additional opportunities available for persons who want to pursue academic knowledge and perhaps more importantly, labor education training. So we would support the avenues or increasing the avenues available to our youth and our people for academic and worker education. But as we said, there must be accountability and democratic governance.
Can we safely say that the establishment of the Gawu Labour College was aimed at providing an alternative to the CLC?
No, we cannot say that. GAWU is the biggest union, and I can't speak for them. But what I know is that on their own, from their own funds, they spent $110 million to build a college. They're staffing it and paying the staff from their own resources. They've never asked the government for a cent. And more particularly where GAWU is concerned, they have over the past 4 years run training courses specifically for workers in the field of labor education to the extent that more than 1,100 persons have graduated from training programs offered through GAWU. And that's an impeccable record.
From your standpoint, what's the future of the Critchlow Labour College?
The future of anything has great potential once there is unity of purpose.
Any other?
Will the ministry be releasing funds to the city council? Since you said the ministry has some influence over the release of funds, so will there be funds released for the budget?
I think there are two things we need to talk about here. There is the subvention program, which is funded by government through the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. And there is the annual estimates, which is funded by the municipalities and the NDC's own revenue, rates and taxes, market fees, building fees, etc. In respect of the subvention, the funds of which come from the consolidated fund, the municipalities, city council, no exception, is expected to meet with residents, discuss, hear their views In other words, there must be some engagement with residents. Then these are discussed at the level of the council, finance committee, and the council statutory and sent to us. Once we agree with the proposals, and in 99 times we do agree with it, once it comes out of the consultation, those funds will be made available. With respect to the estimates, the annual estimates, those are funded by the council's own resources that they garner from rates and taxes, market fees, etc. So that's the answer. We are not about to take taxpayers' money to finance any budget deficits. We are not about to do that. We think that all the municipalities and all the NDCs ought to cut their coat according to their cloth, live within their means. The problem we have with the council is that they are not managing the resources that are at their disposal. For example, last year, they budgeted to receive $2.4 billion in revenue. They received 1.6. They expended 1.5. But out of the 1.5 that they expended, 980 million went to employment costs and employment overhead. So you can understand what I'm talking about.
Also, you said there was some provisions in the budget for local elections. Can you see what those provisions were?
I don't know if they have removed those things. As I pointed out in my opening remarks, there's provision for increasing salaries, increasing stipends, all kinds of increases, except what the ratepayers are looking for, increases in the allocation to provide core services, drainage, removal of vegetation, solid waste management. Those are what the citizens are looking forward to. They also plan to increase the employment staff by some 4%. And as I would have pointed out before, a significant percentage of the present staffing is underutilized. But they plan to increase it.
Any other? If not, thank you all very much. This is the correct one?
Yeah.
Change it, change the figure.